welcome back, you filthy exiles. So we're going to get into the build which I've been promising for the last week, but because I've been a little busy, I haven't had a chance to put together until now. This is my Vortex 2.0 Occultist. Now, with this one, I'll talk through 3 different trees, or maybe just the primary tree, but I've done a bit of a cheap version, I've done a more expensive version, and I've done an All's Uprising version. So the difference of the damage profile is about 930 something for the cheap cold dot. All's Uprising is about 1.9 million. And the version, which is my expensive version that I'm running, and the things that make it expensive are in particular the Awakened gems. There's no expectation that you would get a level 6 Awakened Elemental Focus. It's ridiculous. I just completely lucked out on some of these rolls because I crafted it myself. The other thing too in the expensive build is I have Unwavering Stance on my character as well, so I can't be stunned. I can't be stun locked, which is good in Delve. But anyway, we'll run through all 3 of these trees, and all 3 of these trees will be in the POB. I haven't done a life version at this stage, just because I'm working on a Magic Find character, which there'll be an update video out later today on. Now, I guess just talking through the build, what is it? What does it do? So, one of the biggest things with just ease of play is just being able to move around and just drop a crazy skill and it kills everything on the screen. And you'll have seen in the B-roll, this handles pretty much all endgame bosses outside of Ubers. And right now it's sitting at, I think I'm just shy of 700 Delve, and I'm still pushing down because it's quite a ridiculous build. So if we scroll down here, let's make sure there's no Crystal Kings in there that I've missed. As you can see, we have went very far. So we are at 694 in Delve in depth. So it's a pretty deep, chunky Delver. This will probably end up making it to 1,000. What am I doing with this build? Just deep delving and farming Azurite and pure currency. So I'm just literally just stashing chaos and then just investing into my other builds. Which is why I've got no exalts in there, because I keep throwing them at other builds. Outside of that, pretty much how it works, you map Vortex to your move button, and then as you move, you run around and you drop Vortex. And then to double down, we've got Cold Snap and Vow Cold Snap, and then we also use Frost Bomb. And what Frost Bomb does, and you'll notice in the tree, actually I think I've messed up the tree slightly based on that, it creates negative 15 resistance for enemies. We'll just quickly update the trees here in the live while I'm recording, because negative 15 and All's version configuration negative 15. Okay, all right. Just go into the main tree. So that's pretty much the premise of the build. Now, the other things that make this build tick are that it does use Profane Bloom, and we get our curses from our rings. Now, some of this gear in this build, you're going to say, oh, this isn't cheap geared, Jorgen. No, it's not, because I'm going to max the shit out of it. What can you make cheaper? Well, we'll talk about that when we get into the gearing, and I'll give you an idea of what to look for. And I've also put a cheaper wand, for example, in the POB. And we'll talk about the belt and everything and cheaper options of that when we get to that. That's pretty much it. And so pretty much this is a max block character too. It does use the Aegis Aurora. I'm aware that this is, what's the price of this right now? It's pretty cheap right now because we're later in the league. I am aware that this is more expensive. Now my version does use it at Series Foible, which makes this build more palatable early on. Gives you a lot better mana sustain. I have got a max roll on my helm, but even the helm is relatively cheap. It's, you know, there are items in this build that are cheaper than other items. If you use it for the intended purpose, which is I use it for Delve, and that's how I get all my currency. As you can see, it's pretty easy to get this build working if you're delving with it. The other thing too that we'll talk about at the end is Pantheons, because this league more than ever I've found that Pantheon is a configuration, not so much just something you have in the background, which is why I've unlocked multiple Pantheons in full. And we'll talk about that as well. But anyway, let's dig into the build, and I'll run through, I guess, the POB, and we'll sense check it to make sure it's not bullshit. Okay, here's our POB. As per the norm, there's a lot of shit going on in here, but I like to focus on the configurations because this is how you know that it's not a full shit build. So anyway, so just talking down. We're not always on low energy shield. Actually, we want that to be ticked off. I don't know why I had that ticked on. We'll fix that. Onslaught, where's that coming from? It's coming from the, we'll just leave it on there. It's coming from our boots. So we got a syndicate craft for Onslaught on kill. So that's where that comes. Alternatively, you could put it on your flask. Frenzy charges. How do we generate frenzy charges? Well, funnily enough, when we use Cold Snap, when enemies die within the Cold Snap range, which there's a lot of enemies that are going to die, you get 25% chance to gain a frenzy charge when an enemy dies in the skills area. That's how we get frenzy charges, in case anybody was wondering. So that is legit. Now, is that going to work on bosses? No, it's not necessarily going to work on bosses if there's no ads around the boss. But for delving purposes, it's really good. So I'll just bring this up so it's not as muffled. I know it's the last video wasn't as good. Just bring this down slightly too. All right. Unholy Might, that shouldn't be on there. It doesn't affect the build anyway. Consecrated Ground, yes, you are running a Bottled Faith. Do you need a Bottled Faith? Not really, but it definitely makes things a lot easier. Because we're running Soul of Abarath, we could have this and our movement speed would go up on Burning Ground, but we'll talk about why we need to run that anyway later in the piece. Now, number of enemies in the vicinity, I calculate 10. The reason why is because we're in Delve, we're pretty much surrounded 24/7, and this actually is significant because what you'll notice is the effective hit pool will go down if we adjust this. And the reason why we have this is it's coming from Solar Lunaris. And this is why I want to talk about Pantheons and why they're important, because this is a significant increase to survivability in lower tiers of Delve. And it may not seem like it is, but that 6% reduction to Elemental, the projectile avoidance, and as well as the movement speed and the phys damage reduction are quite significant because Delve is heavy on the physical damage side. So that's why this is an important Pantheon to have. Now, have I killed recently? It doesn't really matter, we just get more regen rate. But for intensive argument purposes, we're delving, so we're always killing something, so we just have it ticked on. Mana spent, well, it's like 96 mana to cast Vortex. And I think recently denotes like the last 5 seconds or whatever, so we're usually casting Vortex like once to 2 to 4 times within that time span. So yes, we have definitely spent 200 mana. Have we been hit recently? Yes, it's a max block character, and we're pretty, and because we're running unwavering stance on our chest armor, our Skin of the Lords, we're pretty much always getting hit because we have no evasion. Enemy level is Sirus. We've got it on Awaken 9. We have -15 cold resist to enemies, and that is because of Frostbomb right here. So cold exposure applies -15 cold resistance to enemies. So that's where that's coming from. That's not I put it in to make the damage look greater than what it is. No, it legit is, and even without that, it's still pretty reasonable. But we've got it in there anyway because that's the correct damage, and anyone who wants to fight me on it can fight me on it. Alright, we've got nothing else ticked in any of these areas because nothing else is applicable. Is the enemy chilled? Well, we're running Hypothermia, so yes, the enemy will be chilled. If we look at Hypothermia, yeah, chance to freeze enemies which are chilled, 30% increased chill duration on enemies, and then, you know, we are applying chill on enemies from multiple sources. So we have Cold Snap, which is chilling enemies. We have just straight up Frost Blink, which chills enemies. Anything that applies cold damage will chill enemies. So they're all pretty chill. And then beyond that, Unnerved, yes, we get that from one of our Awakened Control Destruction. So when you get it to level 5, which you can probably pick that up for 1x, then 10% chance to unnerve enemies for 4 seconds on hit. So we're pretty much always unnerving enemies. And is the enemy on Consecrated Ground? This has a bit of an impact on damage, and this is coming from our Bottled Faith that we can see there. So as you can see, like, the tree is pretty reasonable as far as the configurations. There's nothing here that's crazy. Is it going to be absolutely perfect? No. Are you going to have all these things on? Most of the time you will. In Delve, you absolutely will. And mapping less so. Bossing less so. So it just varies on the use case of what you're using Vortex for. But that's pretty much how this part of the sort of, yeah, the guide is going to explain it. And then, yeah, anyway, we'll get into the gearing now and we'll talk through that. Okay, this is the fun part. So this is the more expensive version, and we'll talk about, to get the cost down as we go, what you can do in alternative. But pretty much off the cuff, I've got a Crown of the Inward Eye. This is max rolled, which you don't need to max roll. It's just getting more ES and armor. And I've got Malevolence on this, the increased mana reservation. Now these, with this roll, I think I saw it at the start of the video when I checked it, was about 1 Exalt, so it's really cheap. You do this with any aura skill that you're running, but we want to be able to pack as much aura into this as we can without negating our mana pool. Aegis Aurora, obvious thing. The reason why replenishes energy shield by 2% of armor when you block. That's a huge game changer on this build, and it's the reason why we can push down and delve. I use an at-series foible, which is corrupted with a Malevolence aura effect roll. This wasn't crazy expensive. Just get rid of that. It's like 1 Exalt. It's a really good item and underrated. The replica item's great on things like RF, but the main item's really good on builds that use ES. So the other thing is, it means I don't have to muck around trying to balance attribute points like strength and dexterity in this build so much, which makes it a lot easier to build it. In the last tree that I'll provide in the description, it'll have an All's Uprising configuration. The only real difference is you get a free Hatred Aura and you can delve deeper, but that's about it. Or not delve deeper, you just get more DPS. It doesn't make it any more tanky. And then beyond that, we're running a a ruby ring, which is giving me elemental curse on hit. So whenever our vortex hits an enemy, then they get curse on, and then that triggers profane bloom, and also malediction as well, which is on the ascendancy. And when I'm talking about that, we have malediction and we have profane bloom. Now, could you run 1 aura, 1 curse? Yeah, you could. Is it recommended? No, because it'll drop your DPS. So if you try and run Bastion, I think it's Bastion of, let's just have a look at the skill tree here. If you sub out the ascendancies and you decide you want to run a simpler ring and get rid of malediction, straight away you lose like 200 and something, 300,000 cold dot. So if you want more defense, you could run Vile Bastion, but I wouldn't recommend, because we've got so much ES regeneration, everything built into the build. Literally just run it as I've got it there. You'll get more damage out of it with less gearing. The other ring that we're running has Frostbite on hit. As you'll notice, they all have all elemental resistances and target energy shield and all resist. We have reduction to, or -7 mana cost to non-channeling skills on our other ring. Now, the other thing too, if you haven't got this craft, all you need to do is search for Elrion Veiled Rings on POE Ninja, not POE Ninja, POE Trade. The reason why is then you'll be able to unveil those rings and get that craft, and then, you know, you can do this. So that's how you get around that. For anyone who didn't know how to do that, that's how you do that. Then we're running a Skin of the Lords with Unwavering. Reason why we're running this, now this isn't a double corrupted version, because that would just be insane if we had a +2 to AoE. We get an automatic +2 to all of our gems, and we get Unwavering Stance. In the cheaper version, I've got it running, from memory, I've got it running Zealot's Oath. So you don't necessarily need the stun immunity straight away. And other areas that we pull stun immunity from is, for example, Arcane Sanctuary we have on the build, and you could also build it into your flasks as well if you wanted to. And that's how you would make that a little bit cheaper. But the other thing to remember as well is with Skin of the Lords, you need to make sure you get the right socket colors. So in this case, you're running 2 green, 1 red, 3 blue. Now, there is an argument to say that you could switch out Hypothermia and increase the damage and run Cruelty. Now, I've heard people say this and different people have done this. The reason why I don't do this is because Hypothermia is a really good utility skill down in Delve. It slows enemies down and it hinders them a hell of a lot. Whereas Cruelty will up your damage by, say, 300,000 to 400,000 dot. That's great if you're taking on bosses, not so great if you are trying to survive and you don't want to die. As you can see, I'm pathing my way to level 97 now because it's so easy to level up with this character because I barely ever die. But yeah, it's really up to your preference. But if you can get it Unwavering, but you get 2 red instead of 2 green, and 1 green and 3 blue, that's what you should do with it. If that's the case, if that's the cheaper option for you, or if you're on console and you get your hands on this, but that's the color offset, then you know that's what you can do. But yeah, that's pretty much the understanding of that. And then the boots. So boots are a little bit more expensive here. I crafted these boots and I just used dense fossils, just pretty dense and metallic fossils. So pretty much all you need to do is get a high item level set of boots. This actually had a double influence on it as well. And realistically, these boots are not too expensive from the get-go. So we don't need that. Yeah, they're like 1 to 2 Exalt, even just the base boots, and then really you just need to run the influence mods on them for the Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds, and then you can craft the as long as you got an open prefix, you can craft on the Onslaught roll. Pretty simple stuff. Belt, this one is actually worth quite a lot. The reason why is I have a Baran influence on it, or a Crusader influence. I crafted this one myself as well, so all I did was alch the percentage maximum energy shield and lucked out with the fire res and lightning res. Got 2 really good rolls. And that allowed me to then multi-mod it and add 17% flat damage, armor, and 28 to energy shield. And then I just 20%ed it with, I think, Tempering Catalyst. And then Bob's Your Uncle, you've got a 15x belt that is just ridiculous. So, yeah. Anyway, that's how you do that. So this is not an unachievable item, and if you guys want me to do a video on how to do this, I will show you how to do it. You can literally do it with like 4x. The multi-mod is a guaranteed mod, and you get it from running, I can't remember which map, but anyway, that's how you do this. Gloves, same thing. I literally just bought these. It was just maximizing Dex, Energy Shield, and Energy Shield recharge rate, and also I've got Cold Res on it. It's not my ideal gloves because I'd like to get damage while Flasts are in effect, or Cold Dot or something like that rolled onto it, but they're incredibly good for being tanky. The other thing is I've also got increased exposure to unique enemies. Okay, so for Wand, again, I lucked out and I got a really well-rolled wand that only had 3 mods on it, being 1 suffix and 2 prefixes. And I got +1 all spell skills and cold spell skills. And then I managed to roll on just flat spell damage and damage over time. And this wand, I think, at this stage is actually worth quite a fair bit. Nothing like it exists yet, like 15 Exalt. I crafted this. I got the base for like, I think it was like 2x. And then I just multi-modded it. And that's pretty much all I did. And again, just got all my currency out of Delve to be able to do this. So there's a fair bit of self-craft involved in this build. And like, if you guys want me to do videos on it, I can do videos on that as well to break that down, but that's pretty much how this one was crafted. And then basically the flasks, I'm just running all flasks that are magic. I have gain charges on hit, because, you know, that's how we survive. And I've got a lot of block and stun recovery as well. So 79%, 64%, avoidance of ignite, and also shock immunity. And then obviously my bottled faith. And that's just sort of keeping me alive as I'm running around in Delve. The block and stun immunity I've found to be incredibly useful because it means your block rate can trigger a lot more efficiently and you don't get sort of overhit, so your block is not effective. Because what can happen down in Delve is they can breach your block by just hitting you too many times with too many enemies in the vicinity. So this sort of gets around that problem a little bit. At least that's what it feels like when I'm playing it. But that's it for the gearing. So I haven't really adjusted the gearing too much. In the cheaper tree, I've put a cheaper wand with just the +2. So to all spell skills, gems, and cold spell skill gems. Now, if you really wanted a really cheap way around that, you could just get a corrupted one at the moment, because people are basically with recombinators. I was doing this a little bit as well. You can recombinate these wands, but if you use corrupted bases, then you can't craft anything on them. So they're pretty much become bricked. So people are selling those for like 50 to 60 chaos. Nudge, nudge. That's how you get around a +2 wand scenario in this league, if you want to know. But outside of that, that's pretty much the gearing. So we'll move on to the gem setups. Okay, since this is a Delve character, I thought let's do this from Delve. So just in the helm, we're running a level 3 Enlighten, which I leveled up myself. Determination, Malevolence, and Discipline. In the 1, we're running Frostblink, Second Wind, and Frostbomb. And the reason why is we can drop 2 frost bombs. It's at 20%, so we can drop them pretty quickly, which is really useful in Delve. And then in the Aegis Aurora, we're running a max level cast and damage taken because we can take some hits before we need this to trigger. We're running Molten Shell, and we're running Summon Stone Golem. So this just ups our energy shield regeneration because this then synergizes with the Surging Vite or the Zealot's Oath node. So that the regen off your golem just goes straight to your health pool. So if you're having issues with regen, this is one way that you can get around it. I think this mofo does 110 life regeneration per second, which converts back to ES regeneration per second. So when we're standing around, we have like 681 base, and then as we start dropping Vortex, we go up to like 1800. And once the shield starts pinging, it's ridiculous. So that's pretty much the setup there. And then in our body armor, or chest armor, we have a level 4 in power, which with the +2 from the chest gets to level 6. Which gives us +5 to our supported skill gems. We have a level 21 Vortex, and from all the buffing in the tree, it's actually at level 31, which makes it ridiculous. And then we have a level 21 Hypothermia, which gets a +2. We have a level 5 Awaken Control Destruction at 20%, which gets us to level 7 in this chest. Then we have a level 6, and this is where I say this is expensive and I put a cheaper tree. You do not need a level 6 Awaken Elemental Focus. I just got it out of pure dumb luck from Val Orbing it. And this gives us another +1 to our Vortex skill. So that's how we get another +1. And then we also have another level 6 Swift Affliction, which I lucked out and got. I don't even think, it just does it off the thing. I think the price of these is like, yeah, they're like anywhere up to 13x each. They're not cheap. So I'm not going to recommend to do this unless you can do it yourself. You can pick up like the base gems at level 5 right now for 2x or whatever. So do that instead. But then Swift Affliction is what you want in there. Then in our gloves, we're running Cold Snap, we're running Bone Chill, we're running Efficacy and Control Destruction. As you can see, I just left these as they were because I've gotten a bit lazy. And I don't really use this so much for damage, but as I do to synergize cold damage and chill and things like that with Vortex. Vortex is our main damage dealing skill, so don't put too much into this. Then I'm running Defiance Banner in the boots, Vitality, Enlighten, and just a Portal Gem. So that's pretty much it. And yes, this build uses Vitality, and it uses it well. Now you've got a Portal Gem in here, which means if you wanted to fit another aura in, whatever that might be, you can do that with relative ease, because we've still got a pretty big mana pool that's left over that we're not fully using at any point in time. But that's it for the gem setups. Really simple. Nothing crazy. But anyway, let's get into the skill tree, the fun part. Alright, so you guys, if you followed my original build on this, there's a lot going on in this tree. I benchmarked a lot of trees when it came down to building this build, as well as compared to my own, and I made a lot of adjustments around how to deal with the tree. And in this time around, we're running cluster jewels, and the reason why is we can pick up all these different nodes here. And we'll talk about why I'm using these particular jewels, and also these are dirt cheap. They're like 15 chaos tops each, because faster start of energy shield is actually quite important on this build, mainly because we have 100%, and I'll show you how I got that. But anyway, so pretty much come up, you build through the int nodes here. Now if you wanted to push a little bit more ES at the start, you could pick up the ES nodes, but it will cost you an extra 1 or 2 points. Or an extra point, so extra 2 points. And then basically we pull across and get Deep Wisdom into practical application, so we don't get interrupted for any reason. And we also get the resistances and strength and dexterity, which is hard to balance into this build. Then we come up, we'll get Wicked Ward, because then our energy shields are not disrupted, and because we have 100% energy shield regen rate, where is it? A regen occurrence modifier, 100%. Because we have that 100%, when it's triggering a lot more frequently, so this is actually applying along with your base regen, along with your Aegis Aurora, along with your everything else that's reducing damage and keeping you sustaining, and this is how I'm working my way so far down in Delve, because this will trigger and just save your ass. And then we come across and we pick up these nodes up into, you know, the Influence node here and the Reservation Mastery. Now, early on, you're not going to want to take CI or Chaos Inoculation until you have like 2000 energy shield, or until you can put your Aegis Aurora on your character. As soon as you can do that, and that's by about Act 9, as soon as you can do that, then you can go crazy and get Aegis Aurora. And then you pick up Arcane Sanctuary and just get these nodes for the time being until you're ready to put these in. And realistically, these will be the last few things you do. Then you come across, you pick up Arcane Will. We're going to get Prodigal Perfection, Mystic Bulwark, which is a really good node for mana regen. And then we want to get this socket here, and we want to put a large ring Thread of Hope, because we're going to get Mental Rapidity, we're going to get Blast Radius, we're going to get Arcane Focus, we're going to get Essence Surge, and we're going to get Heart of Ice. So we get all those really juicy nodes without needing to travel all around the tree here. Then we'll come across, we'll get Unnatural Calm, we'll get Energy Shield Mastery to get our Discipline Reservation down. Now, arguably, we could get rid of this now because we've got a huge pool and we could allocate this point somewhere else. But, you know, I've got it in there for the argument's sake in case I want to put another aura in. Then we'll come in, we'll pick up Agility because we need that Dexterity. We get Insightfulness. In my version of this build, we run Essence Infusion because this gives us 15% faster start of Energy Shield rate, which is pretty cool. And this is how we get to our 100%. We'll also get the Regenerate Energy Shield per second here as well, and we also get 3% maximum mana as Energy Shield as well, which helps build up our Energy Shield pool. Then we'll come up, we'll get Energy Shield, the Energy Shield block nodes here, block recovery, and also the increased Energy Shield, which buffs up the use of our Aegis Aurora. As you can see, I don't know if you guys have noticed in the gem setups, we do not need to run Tempest Shield, because we achieve almost maximum spell block, 72%, without Tempest Shield, which means we can get shocked, and that's why we have a shock immunity flask. And the way that I've balanced that is simply just do it in the tree. And then we come up and get Zealot's Oath. We pick up these cluster nodes, or these nodes here, because we're going to cluster jewel the shit out of this. Then we'll come down, we'll get Sovereignty, we'll get the increased mana reservation efficiency skill. We'll also come down to get Faith and Steel. We want Defend with 120% armor while not on low energy shield. We're generally not on low energy shield with this build. We're pretty high up in like the 30% range. Then we'll come across and we'll pick up Glancing Blows. This gives us max block. We also want the Sanctuary node down here. When you get some points of free up, you'll get Sanctity, and this will give you more strength, and also give you more armor and also more energy shield. And then we also want to socket a second Thread of Hope. And this is going to now be a medium ring, so we can pick up Divine Judgment, Holy Dominion, we can get Sanctum of Thought, which means we take 30% reduced damage from critical strikes, which is pretty big. And we're going to get an Arcane Capacitor, so our mana sustain increases, and we get Arcane Surge from casting. And that's where that 200 mana spend comes into, because you get Arcane Surge, or 10% increased effect of Arcane Surge, and 10% chance to get Arcane Surge on kill. And then we'll come down and we'll pick up Divine Shield, which means that as long as our armor is greater than our energy shield, we mitigate 3% of physical damage from hits, and that's regenerated back as energy shield, which is another defensive layer that we're using to mitigate damage. Then we'll come up and we'll pick up our cluster nodes. So the first one you want is a triple cluster, or a triple keystone node. Sorry, my nose always goes off when I record videos. We want to get Deep Chill, Widespread Destruction, and Prismatic Heart. But we're only going to take Deep Chill and Prismatic Heart. Fuck Widespread Destruction, you can get it by level 100 if you want. It's just there to sort of pony up these two nodes so that we can pick these two nodes and prioritize. And these are really cheap gems. I think they're like anywhere as high as 60 Chaos. And then basically we get our Watcher's Eye in here. And in our Watcher's Eye, we actually have the 40% faster start of Energy Shield recharge rate while we are affected by Discipline. And that now makes sense why I'm running so many recharge rate jewels, because I'm just stacking Energy Shield recharge. And then we come across and we pick up Vile Reinvigoration. So we get Regenerate 2% of Energy Shield if we've killed an enemy recently. Again, another regeneration ability. Plus we get Flat Energy Shield maximum shield percentage and 24% dot. And then we get Brush with Death. Again, recover 1% of life or energy shield on kill. So again, as we kill, we're recovering more life and regeneration of energy shield, which is really good in Delve. And then we get a Corrupted Blood Immune jewel to socket in here with whatever you really want, but I'm just focusing on energy shield nodes. So the same up here. Exactly the same large cluster, except we're just doing these minor nodes, or these minor jewels, which have damage over time or cold damage over time. increased maximum energy shield, and faster start of energy shield recharge. And that's pretty much it for the tree. And then ascendancy-wise, obviously the first thing we get is Void Beacon, second thing Frigid Wake, then we'll get Profane Bloom, and then lastly we'll get Malediction, because we wouldn't expect to have two curses straight up when we build the build. That's going to be something that you balance out later down the track. But anyway, this tree will be in the POB. This tree is exactly the same in the cheap and the expensive and in the All's Uprising versions. It's just super optimized this time around. I went next level versus the 1.0 build from like 2 or 3 leagues ago. So if you can do this, then you'll get the same survivability that I have and the same damage. I actually got a buddy of mine who I've been running this build with and feeding all my older gear to, and he pretty much got it working tit for tat the same way. And this is the first league that he's gotten a T16s with using one of my builds, or in using a build from me instead of another build from somebody else. But anyway, that's the tree. So we'll talk about the Pantheon next. Alright, so this is something that we sort of take for granted because it's just like this. So you get these things called Divine Vessels, and then you do specific maps. And generally, you just go to your map and you look for where there's this little icon over the top, and that'll generally be a map boss that gives you a Pantheon point. But anyway, the way to look at Pantheons, especially if you're a newer player, is not just something you tick because you get it in the campaign. It's a configuration. So if you're versing a boss, you're going to get Solar Solaris. Because that's going to give you reduced damage with one enemy nearby. And generally with unique bosses, it's just one, like Searing Exarch or Eater of Worlds, or all. There's no other enemies near you. So this is going to negate everything coming from that enemy, even down to critical strikes and whatnot, which can give you huge survivability in one-to-one fights. In Delve, you are completely surrounded 24/7. So we're running Solar Lunaris, and this gives us like 20 to 30% effective hit pool, which just means your overall damage profile that you can take, and then gives you a bunch of other really cool things from projectiles, avoidance, and things like that. And then this build has a susceptibility to burning damage, because for some reason it just doesn't do well against burning damage. We'll just go into D&D. Yep. So the way that we get around that is we just run Soul of Aberrath, which you get in like Act 6, I think. And basically 60% less ignite duration. We already have 48% avoidance as well, and we also get a couple of areas in the tree where we get avoid elemental ailments, and then we also have a shield node up here which gives us 20% to avoid elemental ailments. So we pretty much target all the things that can sort of erode our health pool, and in Delve it's actually pretty devastating to walk across burning areas or deal with burning enemies. So Soul of Aberrath gets around that. And that's pretty much the importance of the Pantheon. It's actually, it is a build-defining configuration if you're going to run it for Delve, but it's very situational. So if you don't have unwavering stance and you keep getting stunned, you could run Soul of the Brine King, and that's going to solve that problem. If you're versing enemies like Sirus or dot-based enemies, then Soul of Arakali is going to do, wonders for you there, because it's decreased damage over time. And then debuffs are not as critical to you as well. They don't, they expire 20% quicker. But I guess the moral of the story when I talk about the Pantheons is that don't look at it as just something as a tick the box thing in the game. It's a configuration, and you can't change it every time you go back to base or your headquarters, your hideout. So that's just something to keep in mind. But that's pretty much the configuration of mine, and this is represented in the POBs. I've gotten a lot more mature in the way that I look at this over the last few builds that I've done. But yeah, definitely something to look at. Alright, so I guess final summing up words. Yeah, overall, this build, as you guys have seen in stream, has made me hundreds of exalts so far. Sorry, bloody nose. It does have some limitations, and that pretty much stems from you're not going to be able to take down like depth 600 Crystal Kings. And sometimes the ES can fail, and that's just due to being overhit by really hard-eating enemies. There's not as much crit reduction on this as my Blazing Salvo build, so it's not so good at taking on different types of enemies in different circumstances. But if you run it for what it is, which is a Delver, it's really good on mapping because of Profane Bloom. It just blows whole screens up. It is pretty good at taking down most bosses. It does fail on some. Looks at Sirus as basically a nothing boss. Everything in the B-roll is they're basically nothing enemies to this build, which those particular bosses are all juice, and they can generally rip through most enemies or most builds pretty easily. So this build holds up pretty strong. Is this completely immortal? No, but it is a Giga Tank. So it's killable at a level, but it's pretty fucking hard to kill it. Ease of build and access to build. The gearing's cheaper than RF. It achieves about the same end result as RF, if not better. It delves lower than RF. It's baffling why more people don't play this over RF, but there are a lot of people that play this build. Can you play this on low life? Yep, you can play it on Shavs, and you can run a Prism Guardian for something a little bit cheaper. You don't necessarily need Max Block or Aegis Aurora. That's going to be more damage based and aura stacking based. You can play health-based variations of this build, which I'll look at for next league, most likely. But yeah, anyway, if this video helped you with the build and helped you understand how to get this working, if you're playing my build in particular, then yeah, please go crazy and drop any questions in the chat. I'll try and get to it. I'm a bit busy at the moment with work and stuff like that, but I'll try and get to things as quickly as I can and respond to all the comments in the comment sections on the videos. Or questions and things like that. But anyway, like and sub, and until next time, have a good one, and bye.